From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 415. Andrew with you once again to talk about basketball video games with my good friend Derek, aka D for 3.
No, I'm happy to be here. Something I haven't told you yet, actually. Stildo33 and I played our entire finals series of the NBA Jam on Fire Edition tournament today.
Spoilers.
Yeah, so I can't give anything away about the series because we're going to upload the videos to the NLSC YouTube and whatnot, so you guys can kind of follow along and see the action and, you know, anticipate what's going to happen. But a couple things I will say about it. There was a lot of swearing. So I actually got on the phone with him, and we were on the phone for the entire series. There was a lot of swearing. There was some yelling. There was some super intense moments. There was some trash talking. It was incredibly fun. And I can't wait for people to see the games because Stildo is excellent at the game. He's a good guy, and it just made for a really fun series.
So I was trying to gauge there, but you're not giving anything away in your voice there, so I commend you for that. That's very good on your part.
It was tough. It was tough because I do want to talk about it because we were talking about it for a while after the series ended because it was that much fun. I will say that just so you know, our listeners know, or they need a refresher, he's using the Celtics. So usually Bird and Garnett, Bird and Allen, or Bird and Pierce. And I'm using the Trailblazers, and I'm always using Drexler and Walton out there. And that's the finals matchup. And it's a best of 7. He has home court advantage. He hosted the entire series, so I had him hosting every game. And I recorded it on my end. But, yeah, it was excellent. And, boy, like he said, you know, during the game, this game, the series, this video game is just so fun. Head to head, and he said that it's his favorite. I want to say that he said it's his favorite arcade hoops game ever now, and that's awesome because he's, you know, like us, he's a lifetime gamer.
Well, you know that I'm right there with him on that assertion that it's the best and certainly at least a personal favorite all-time arcade hoops game. I really hold On Fire Edition in very high regard, but it's been such a fun game to have for that tournament. Obviously, as he said, so fun head to head. Great highlights and whatnot. And I think it speaks volumes that a couple of series have been over in a day.
Yeah, I think that once you pick up that game and you start your series, you don't want to put the game down.
Exactly.
Right. I think that there was a series, which one was it? Oh, yeah, 707 and Stildo 33 in the semifinals. Their series went 7 games, and I think the whole series took an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, but they didn't want to stop. You know, maybe they didn't have all that free time, but they made sure to make time for that game once they picked it up because it's really fun to compete on it, and it's just really fun gameplay wise on the sticks. And because of that, you know, because of the great gameplay and, you know, the great mode that is Road Trip, you and I got back on the road trip and played a few games, even used the street team, and that was a blast.
That game with the street team, we both said it after the game, one of the most fun games we've played of On Fire Edition, online sessions in general, but just the vibe and the flow of that game, the way we were connecting, our chemistry, the highlights we were getting, the alley-oops and whatnot, and just make it all happen defensively and offensively. We came out of that game thinking, that was just incredibly fun. Like, it's always fun when we play, but that particular game, it just stood out to both of us.
It was amazing. I messaged you right after the game, and I said that might be my favorite game that we had ever played on the same team on NBA Jam on Fire Edition. I was using Monster. Andrew was using Struts Monroe. And we got team fire in the game. I think we both had individual fire at one point in the game. A lot of fun alley-oops, great teamwork. And I actually shared on Twitter how we got on team fire, and I thought that was pretty epic. Let's be honest. But yeah, hopping on the road trip, I still think that might be the best mode that's ever been in any arcade hoops game. I really do. I think that it's so well designed. You know, getting the extra players and extra teams, the logos, all of that stuff. It's not too pricey. It's not too grindy, but you still have to work hard to get them. And I just think it's so well made, and it really is a shame that in NBA Jam 2010 they went vanilla. with their modes, and they ended up just having a, like compete against regular NBA teams aspect instead of the road trip.
Well, they did have the boss battles, if you recall, in 2010, and they did have the Remix Tour, and they kind of smushed the Remix Tour and Classic Campaign to make Road Trip, but it was too segmented.
Yeah, it's too segmented, and it's not as fluid of a mode. Like as far as being an all-around catch-all mode, that NBA Jam 2010 didn't have the lore that Road Trip has.
100%. And also locking you to a team that when you get in Classic Campaign, you can only pick a team at the beginning of the Classic Campaign, and then you play with that all the way through. It makes the mode even more repetitive. And to get all the unlockables and to get all the trophies and achievements, if you are into that, obviously, you have to play through with a team from each division. So you're playing this Classic Campaign, which is kind of dry and repetitive. It's enjoyable in parts, but unfortunately they did make it too dry and repetitive on the whole. You got to play through that 6 times, and I've yet to do that. I finished Classic Campaign once, and that was fun enough, but Road Trip, I've played through with you, I played through myself on Xbox 360, I've also got my PS3 copy now, which I'm about halfway through, I think, on that, or certainly at least a quarter of the way through now, so that goes to show how enjoyable that mode is. They probably could have changed things up a little bit more with some of the challenges. There's a lot of classic 2v2 games, but at the same time, you don't want to change that up too much, and they are changing the matchups that you're playing sometimes. A couple of legends, sometimes a legend and a current player, or what was then a current player sometimes. So they still made it work. It's a lot of fun, and you don't have that repetitiveness that you did with Classic Campaign and some of the older games as well. So on top of the gameplay changing with the Real AI, they really addressed one of the biggest problems with arcade basketball games in On Fire Edition, which is repetitiveness.
No, 100%. I like that we switched it up, though, playing on Parsec. We've been switching it up a lot lately, but we decided to connect with you hosting on NBA Live 2001, the PlayStation 2 version. And we used the 90s All-Stars, obviously, with Jordan in the game. He's back in the series since Live 2000. And we went against the 80s All-Stars, and we had it on the lower difficulty just to kind of like test out how co-op worked. And surprisingly, co-op worked amazing on Live 2001, and we had an absolute blast. I thought we had some really good team play in there. You had a huge dunk with Scottie Pippen and Sean Kemp. The Scottie Pippen one in the first half, the Sean Kemp one in the second half. And I thought that played incredibly well, and I had no lag spikes during our session, and surprisingly, you in Australia with poor internet was able to host Live 2001 and for it to work great.
The funny thing is, with 2001, unless you're using direct shoot, and this is very common of games at that time, unless you're using direct shoot, it is very easy to trigger that runner, or trigger a leaning shot instead of triggering the layup or dunk if you're just outside that trigger zone. And the funny thing is that it happened to me, but not you. You had the little bit of input lag, obviously, whereas I didn't. Yet you're the one that's pulling off all the moves inside, and I'm having to quickly pass out of these runners because I'm trying to trigger it too far out. That was funny.
I thought I adjusted well.
Definitely.
Overall, because I didn't have one runner that entire game. And I still had a couple dunks and layups and a couple post moves and whatnot. I thought that might be the best Parsec has ever worked with you in that particular game. But it's just super exciting. I've been connecting with so many different people recently using Parsec. And I connected with at B-Ball Video Games, and we played NBA Street Volume 2. And we were I locked on Magic. He was on Jordan. And we had Bill Walton on the team, and then we ended up playing the NBA Stars, so the NBA Stars from that time. And I got to tell you, that is one of the best co-op experiences you can get. It's right up there with NBA Jam on Fire Edition, if not equal or better. And he adjusted really well. He ended up playing incredibly well, going up for oops, finding me more in the second game, etc. And so we started out on Got Game, which is the lowest level, just to kind of test it out again. We hadn't played that game before together and whatnot, and we blew out the computer. So then we upped the level, I want to say, to Mad Game, and so it's the second to highest, and we won. in our first game on Mad Game, and I thought we played incredibly well. We utilized our game breakers well, etc. And then we tried it on Legendary, and we lost by only a couple points. But that game is timeless. The controls, the fluidity, being able to string together combos and everything. NBA Street Volume 2 is just a great game.
It really ranks up there, without a doubt. And I think cooperative play over Parsec, I mean, competitive is fun, and that's something that we do a lot, obviously, as well. Co-op can be a lot of fun to get on there, because again, it's just like getting on the sticks with a friend sitting on the couch or computer chair next to you, and playing these games and saying, okay, let's see if we can just blow out the computer, let's see if we can take it on at its hardest, most cheesy challenge on the highest difficulty level, or whatever. I do think we need to crank up the difficulty in NBA Live 2001 next time we play, but we do need to be careful, because the higher you go, it does get very cheesy. But I thought we played extremely well together, and you were just nailing free throws. And that's a tough one when you have some input lag, getting the T-meter to stop exactly when you want, because it always seems to overshoot. But you were nailing them.
Yeah, again, so I connected with, I want people to understand this about Parsec, because it's that he keeps bringing up lag. So I connected with Stildo today, Stildo hosted. I had zero lag. The whole finals.
It's a me problem. It is a me problem.
Yeah. So when people connect with me, I've had Tech Mobile, I've had Brent Lane, there's like zero lag for them. They're knocking down free throws, they're timing their shots and everything. So what I want people to understand is that the problem is that Andrew doesn't have good internet. So, and even I've had Culture connect with me on Wi-Fi, and it worked amazing. She was timing all of her free throws. She was timing all of her shots. We won the game in overtime. Wasn't on the easiest level, etc. So, I want to make sure people understand that it usually works either close to perfect or perfect with everybody I've connected with, except for Andrew. So yeah, on Live 2001, I was able to time my free throws with Reggie Miller. I was also timing my shots. Remember, I hit that 3 in the second half with Reggie Miller.
Oh yeah.
And whatnot, and I hit that fadeaway at the buzzer with Gary Payton and everything. I'm just still blown away with how great Parsec works. And as far as like the co-op thing, I totally agree. At B-Ball Video Games was talking to me when we were talking about what we were going to play, and he was like, "Yeah, let's play co-op," because he didn't want to compete that night. You know what I mean? Like he didn't want to go head to head with somebody, and it was just the perfect decision for us to jump on and play cooperative play on the same team, and have kind of a loose, fun experience. So yeah, co-op for listeners who are like worried about, maybe I don't want to get on Parsec and play against somebody because I'm worried, I'll get embarrassed, or I won't play well, or they're going to think I suck or anything. Just remember that co-op is always an option.
And it leads to some incredible highlights, some of which were in the top 10 this week.
Good top 10. And a familiar name at number 1.
Just Ming. Yes, from a My Team highlight there with a tremendous bounce alley-oop.
The best thing about that alley-oop is that it was a bounce alley-oop, but also a contact finish. A contact dunk finish. Like, how is that not going to be the number 1 play of the week? And I actually reached out to him on that highlight. So I saw him comment on a Ronnie 2K post, and I said, you know what, I haven't checked in on John in a while. So I clicked on his profile, and that's his pinned tweet, is that highlight. And it's from September of last year. So I reached out to him via PM, and I was like, hey, can I use this for the top 10? This highlight is amazing. Like, I've never seen in NBA 2K22, I've never seen a bounce pass contact alley-oop dunk. And he was like, yeah, sure. So that's how I ended up getting that highlight, and that's how it ended up in the top 10. But overall, I thought it was a really strong top 10. And, I look forward to getting more highlights this week.
And people are clearly enjoying it. Got a very nice comment from Nader saying that it's getting better and better, and we agree.
Yeah, I had some regulars from the NLSC contribute this week. We had TG So Good with an alley-oop at number 10 from NBA 2K22. We had a 2K20 highlight from Sticky Fingers, a steal by Carmelo Anthony, and then a sweet dunk on the other end with Kobe Bryant. We had the Live King, again, contributing with an alley-oop to Vince Carter. Love having those regulars in there. Love having those mainstays of the NLSC, submitting highlights and getting into the top 10. And I think it's good for people to see that, too, that they're also into it.
I love to see it, and of course I've been sending you some highlights, and once again, it's very hard for me to do that now without putting some commentary on it. You've really gotten me into that.
Yeah, what great commentary for your. I think you were number 5 in the countdown, and the best part of that commentary is Marv Albert, where he goes, "Goodness gracious," and he's like losing his voice over that dunk. And I have to ask you, what's the real replay for that one?
So with that one, I was trying to find commentary of somebody dunking against the Blazers so that it would fit. And that was actually Jonathan Simmons against the Blazers back in April 2017, from a video on the official NBA YouTube channel, I believe. Jonathan Simmons monster slam over the Blazers. And yeah, I was very pleased with how I was able to get that one to fit.
Right, and he was with the Spurs at that time, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I think I remember that highlight. I thought it fit in perfectly. And you actually sent me a highlight today from NBA 2K14 where you throw an alley-oop to Carmelo Anthony and he does one of his quick drop finishes and whatnot. And the audio you chose for that is just as good or better than that Marv Albert commentary from the top 10 this week. So, no, I love it. I love that people are getting into the top 10. And like I said, I look forward to the highlights every week.
It's gotten to the stage where I'll send you a highlight without the commentary, and then I think, okay, now if I want to get this into the top 10, I have to really spruce this up. I have to send this. Well, I have to do it for my own benefit as well, because it is a shame that it doesn't record the commentary automatically with the inbuilt recording on 2K14 and a few other games in the series, obviously. But I found that clip of a Melo alley-oop, and I did have to cut out some things. I had to cut out the part where he says, from Felton, and references to the Knicks, because obviously he has joined me on the 76ers in my MyCAREER, so I've had to cut out bits here and there and make sure there's enough space and crowd noise to fill in the gaps so that it's not jumping too much. But once again, I was very pleased, not to toot my own horn, but with my efforts of getting that clip and cutting it up just right, the audio, and putting it over my video. I was quite pleased.
Yeah, I think also part of you feels guilty now. I think you feel guilty when you submit a highlight without audio.
I mean, it's just not the same.
Yeah, it definitely it stands out now in the top 10 when there's a highlight without audio. So I as you know, I go fishing for audio for highlights that I get submitted that don't have that audio. I do want to make it clear to everybody that if you are playing PC games and you're taking highlights, there's no reason why you should be recording in anything other than 1080p at 60 FPS at this point, because of programs like Action or the built-in NVIDIA capture or the built-in AMD capture. You definitely should have the means to get audio on your highlights and for it to be in good quality. And along with the highlights, Andrew, you have been sending me box scores from your NBA 2K14 MyCAREER from Season 2. And you even put up a quadruple-double.
I've had a couple now, and that was something I was doing in 2K19 a fair bit. And once you get your ratings up and you've mastered the steal mechanics of the particular game, because of course there are always some tricks to do against the CPU to get your steal numbers up, and I've kind of mastered the art of stat padding in MyCAREER, because it's so important in later games to really grind for everything you can, every little bit of VC. And even in 2K14, I've kind of got the goal now of getting to 99 overall and getting to the Hall of Fame. But I'm really enjoying this second year. Year 2 is always about destroying the league. I'm averaging a triple-double at the moment, which I have done before in 2K19, and I think I might have done it in 2K20. I definitely did it in Year 2 of 2K19 MyCAREER, which is when I did get a player to the Hall of Fame at long last. So now I'm looking to go back and doing that with 2K14 as well. But the one thing that does frustrate me about my stats this year, Derek, are the turnover numbers. And a lot of that comes from the body steals in 2K14, which can be very numerous, unfortunately, and also the tendency for players to just refuse to catch a pass. I sent you a short clip of Thaddeus Young just being very scared of the ball when I passed it to him. And stuff like that, fumbling a pass or missing an easy one, should happen because it is actually realistic. It's one of those things that's a realistic thing to happen in a video game, but it never does feel that way because it always feels a bit predetermined. But that is the problem. It should happen, but in the situation that it happened that I sent you, that was frustrating.
How many turnovers a game are you averaging right now?
6.
6. Okay, so that's not that bad considering your assist to turnover ratio. If you really look at it, you're putting up ridiculous assist numbers.
15.6 assists per game and offering 20 assists. So it does kind of even out, yeah.
Yeah, that Thaddeus Young, where it looks like that play where it looks like he's scared of the ball, the pass should just go to him, but it almost looks like Thaddeus Young, like his arms disconnect
Yeah.
or like they dislocate in order for any flails to try to catch the pass. That's been a issue in the 2Ks for years. That's a legacy issue that happens in 2K17 as well. I will say that on next gen NBA 2K22, I don't think I've really seen that happen. So that is a legacy issue that I think that they've fixed. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's happened to you either.
No, no. There's been some other can turnovers, but not that.
Right. So another one that I think they've fixed, and I think they've done a really good job on. So hey, look, I'm complimenting their most recent 2K. How about that? They allow you to do outlet passes now without the fear of constantly throwing it over the receiver. So I think they did a really good job with that, where you can now get a rebound and you can, rifle the ball down the floor, Bill Russell style, or Kevin Garnett style, or I don't know, Will Chamberlain style, etc. And your receiver will catch it the majority of the time. And if he's in space, he's not going to bobble the ball or anything like that, or it's not just going to awkwardly sail over his head and his arms aren't going to dislocate and everything. So I think that they've done a good job at fixing those issues.
No, as much as we criticise the recent games, there has been improvement over the years. And you go back and play an older game, and you do notice these issues that have been cleaned up. So that is always nice to see. As far as the turnovers, it's become a challenge to try and remain aggressive, but at the same time bring that number down. Once again, the assist-to-turnover ratio isn't too bad, but it's just kind of a point of pride for me, because in 2K19, I was able to go many games without getting a turnover at all, and still getting high assist numbers. So that was always a great challenge to do, and that kind of the Chris Paul challenge, I guess. He's had quite a few high assist, zero turnover games in his lengthy career. So that's something I've been aiming for. And there's a lot of milestones in NBA 2K14 MyCAREER that you can do for game, season, and career. It gets you some extra VC, which isn't too much of a problem at this point, because I am 93 overall. I can do whatever I want against the CPU and have a lot of fun doing it. So I'm not in desperate need of VC. It's more of a self-imposed challenge, or a challenge that's right there to attempt, I suppose. And one of them is to get 0 turnovers in 10 consecutive games. And good luck doing that in 2K14 on 12-minute quarters, obviously. But there's another one that I've been going for, and I've come so close on a couple of occasions, and that is get 25 points on 100% shooting from the field and free throws, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in a single game. I'm averaging a triple-double, so the assists and the rebounds, not a problem. I'm shooting about 68-69% from the field, and can get to the basket fairly regularly if I want to play it safe. So I've had a couple of very close attempts, but I'm getting up towards that 20 points, and then I'm out on the break, and somebody catches up and blocks a cockback dunk, a back scratcher dunk, or I miss a layup unexpectedly, and man, that milestone continues to elude me. And I wanted to ask you, because I know you and your brothers go for stats in your seasons, and that's part of the challenge that you impose upon yourselves. Do you ever get to a point where you feel that you're putting too much pressure on yourself to get a statistical milestone, and that's when it just kind of goes sideways?
That's a great question. First off, I was going to say this is, when stat padding goes to the extreme where, instead of doing that back scratch or dunk, if you see a defender in the vicinity, that's when you just dribble it back out to the 3-point line.
Yeah, it really does, yeah.
Right out to the 3-point line in order for, it's like if you're not going to compromise the win in order to do this, that's what I would probably do. I would just dribble it out to the 3-point line, reset, and not take a chance on getting blocked or stopped at the rim at that point. So when we do our legend seasons, like we just finished ours on 2K22, all 82 games, we have stat goals at the beginning of the season. And normally what it is we're going to make Larry Bird average a double-double with at least 5 assists a game. We're going to make Wilt Chamberlain average at least 15 rebounds a game and 30 points per game. We're going to make Bill Russell average, 20 points for the season. It was 15 points a game and at least 15 rebounds a game. Jordan is going to lead the league in scoring, and he's going to average at least 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals a game. And then Magic Johnson is going to average at least 20 points per game, over 10 assists a game, and over 3 steals a game. So we have like those stat goals, right? And then there's other ones on top of that, like Magic has rebound goals and everything. And then we have another goal in the season is everybody is going to, all 10 guys that are active and playing, they're all going to average at least 10 points per game. So right down to the 10th guy, everybody has to average double figures. So those are the type of goals that we have for Legends. One thing that we had to bail on early in the season was getting Hakeem Olajuwon 10 rebounds a game. So one of our goals was Kareem was going to average 10 rebounds a game off the bench, and Hakeem Olajuwon was also going to average 10 rebounds a game off the bench. And it was just impossible to hit all of the other goals and do that. So we had to abandon Hakeem averaging 10 rebounds a game. So yeah, we every now and then we have to abandon a stat goal because it's basically unreachable. But yeah, that's what makes our Legend season so fun is, we have so many different stat goals during the game that we have to be paying attention and trying for those stats from the first second of the game until the last second of the game. So that's when going for stats is fun. Now, if you're playing in an NBA Jam on Fire Edition tournament, obviously you're not going for stats. But if you're playing in like an NBA Live 10 tournament, or you're playing competitive against the computer using regular teams, and you have a chance to lose, and it's not like loose fun like when we play Legends, we're not going for stats like that. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have like stat goals during that specific really competitive game. It's usually only for loose fun, which is kind of what you're doing with NBA 2K14 MyCAREER.
Oh, definitely. You never want to compromise the win. But when you do have control of the game, you kind of get like Larry Bird shooting a few left-handers, do you not? You start putting in those self-imposed challenges and going for stats to keep things fresh and interesting and challenging. But if nothing else, you can run out of time. I mean, 48 minutes, if you're playing on full-length quarters, that's ample time to do a lot of stuff. But you can run out of time, especially if the flow of the game hasn't facilitated some of the stats. And I think a lot of MyCAREER gamers can relate to being very close to getting a triple-double and then being subbed out in the final 2 minutes, and it's the one time you want to stay in a little bit longer in a full-length game. And, no, I just wanted to get one more rebound. Oh, thank you, coach, for pulling me. So, yeah, I think a lot of MyCAREER gamers can relate to that.
Yeah, well, another piece of this too, and you actually brought this up to me, you said that you had made a turnover or whatnot because you were going for a highlight. Another thing about when you play loose like that and you're playing 2K14 MyCAREER like you are, or you're playing, NBA 2K22 Legends like my brothers and I are, or whatever, sometimes, especially with the top 10 being out there, you're going for that monster highlight.
Oh,
right?
Definitely. Absolutely.
So once you've reached your other goals, or if it's early in the game and you're feeling confident about getting to your goals, sometimes, on 2K22, I'm not going to lie, I'll force it. I'll cross over somebody and I'll see a little bit of a lane and I'll push back on the joystick and I'll try to dunk on 3 people. Why? Because it would look really cool and it would be great to share on Twitter so people can share that fun with me. But then also, maybe it could be a top 10 highlight. So I think that the top 10 is definitely kind of reshape the way we look at monster highlights in these games. I think you could agree.
Oh, definitely, when there's an incentive to share highlights. And again, that's why I love seeing so many people get involved in the top 10 and be very excited about it and want to get into it, want to get into the top 10. That's been very encouraging to see. But just for my gaming, I can absolutely agree that there are times when I'm looking to make that highlight play.
Yeah, I think it's been great. I think that the Parsec sessions have been absolutely awesome lately. Can't wait for our March Madness tournament that we're going to do over Parsec. And I still think we should do NCAA Basketball 09, but I might look at a couple different options just to see if there's something even a little bit more fun and loose that we could play for that tournament. But now we've finished. We're not going to give anything away about the results, but now that we've finished the NBA Jam on Fire Edition tournament and the NBA Live 10 tournament, and both went over so smooth, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, we could do a tournament on any game, really.
No, we really could, and it's great to see it working so well with both a 5-on-5 sim-oriented game and an arcade game. And it shows that it's been just as fun for both, just as viable. A tournament with an arcade game is going to be over a bit quicker because, as you say, you get into it and then you can finish a series in a day. It's a bit harder playing 5-minute quarters. Sometimes you want to take a break, especially after a very intense game. Even after an intense game of On Fire Edition, Tecmo Bowl had to take a bit of a break there, which again, I love people getting so into it.
Well, what's going to be cool about the March Madness tournament, it's going to be something that we haven't done before. It's going to be single elimination. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think I'm going to try to get 16 participants for the tournament, have 2 separate brackets, etc. And we'll have single elimination all the way until the finals, which will also be single elimination. But I think it'll be a good change of pace and, 2 10-minute halves will suffice. I think that will be perfect for the tournament. And I am thinking about live streaming the games. I got my mic set up. I got Action being able to stream to YouTube in incredibly high quality. I'm really thinking about streaming the games and then connecting with people at times and having my mic on as well, and talking during that action. So thinking about doing a few different things for my YouTube channel.
Oh, that'll be awesome. And I think conceptually that makes sense, because we're looking to do it in March to coincide with March Madness, and to have it single elimination as the actual NCAA tournament is, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I'd love to get 64 people on it, and maybe we could, but I think that's going to be too high of a number to reach, especially with schedules and everything and people living in all different parts of the world. I think 16 is a good number for competitors.
Just doing the Sweet 16, I think as a minimum goal, is just going to make for a great tournament. Absolutely. I mean, as it continues to grow, people are very interested in playing, and whenever we post the highlights on the YouTube channel or you posting it on Twitter, people are saying, how is this possible? Well, if you want to check out the NLSC YouTube channel or Derek's YouTube channel, you can find a detailed tutorial on how to use Parsec to do this, and this is how we do it, and how we'll be running the tournament. And I think live streaming would just be awesome, and again, something new for us.
I really got to get Nate and Roger, the NBA Live 2001 guys, on Parsec. I know that they, are a little intimidated by setting up the application and whatnot, and just it's hard to get motivated to do that stuff. But I was just watching they uploaded a video of NBA Live 2002. Actually, they were playing that, and Nate was being the Lakers, and Roger was being the Spurs, I want to say, and they had their commentary behind it and everything. They were just having such a fun time with that game, and I'm watching their highlights, and I'm like, man, I want to play against these guys. And man, if we have an NBA Live 2001 or 2002 tournament, I'd love for these guys to be in it. Like I've said, you don't have to have a super strong internet connection, and you certainly don't need to have a great computer in order to use Parsec and connect with people. Like I said, I've had people connect with me using MacBooks. I've had a ton of people connect with me using Wi-Fi, sometimes weak Wi-Fi, etc., and they still had a great experience. So I definitely got to get those NBA Live 2001 guys on Parsec.
And if we can do that, we do need to do us versus them, 2v2.
I'd love to do that. Yeah, and I think that would be an absolute blast. I also think it would be super competitive as well. But it would be really cool if all of us were on a mic, too.
Oh, definitely.
I think that'd be fun.
Definitely. And they've thrown out a challenge for us for Live 2001 as far as scoring points, on putting it down to rookie and just going mad with no rules and seeing how many points we can score. So that's something we need to try at some point.
They scored 752 points with Kevin Garnett in one game.
Incredible.
They uploaded that to YouTube, and I was watching those highlights, and they put it on 12-minute quarters, arcade, lowest level difficulty, and they scored 752 points with Garnett. So, that would be fun for us to try that, to see how many points we could score as a team, playing on the same team.
And, that's the kind of fun you can have. We were talking last week about, look, don't be concerned about difficulty level as far as impressing other people, play what's enjoyable, but sometimes just turning the difficulty down and saying, how badly can I destroy the computer? What kind of incredible records can I set? And of course, it's always going to be a bit more impressive if you can do that on the highest difficulty level. But just as some wacky fun, have fun. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. It also makes for good YouTube content if you are trying to grow your channel, right? Sure. Or you're trying to grow your brand and whatnot. You could always, upload a video of some wild feat that you achieved, even if it is on the easiest level, and people would more than likely like to tune in to that. Now, it is harder to gain an audience for a lot of these really older games, as we've noticed, like with the videos that we've uploaded to the NLSC channel. But, the biggest thing is that you're having fun with the games and enjoying what you're doing. That's the most important thing.
Old games, there's always going to be kind of a niche audience for that. Although at the same time, I've looked at my Way Back Wednesday content and the content that we've been doing with YouTube, and clearly there is an audience for that older stuff. Nostalgia is very powerful, obviously. Those games hold up. Many of those games hold up extremely well, and we want to see some of those concepts come back, obviously. Or we want to see that fun come back. But, there's a lot of 2K22 videos in the latest top 10, so people are enjoying the latest game, which is nice to see.
Yeah, quite a few. So the 4 games that were represented in the top 10 were NBA 2K22, 2 highlights from NBA 2K20, NBA 2K14, which was your highlight, and then NBA Street Volume 2, which was me and at B-Ball Video Games. The lowest number of games that we've had in the top 10 maybe ever. The lowest number of different titles. But I still thought it made for a good top 10.
And as far as the future of basketball gaming, we're obviously doing some wishlist stuff for NBA 2K23 at the moment, and to that point, your mailbag prompt this week talks about the gameplay in 2K23. Congratulations, you are hired as the gameplay director for NBA 2K23. What direction are you giving your programmers and developers? And before we open up the mailbag to get the community's responses to that prompt, we thought we'd talk a little bit about our answers. So, Derek, if you were made gameplay director for 2K23, what are some of the first things that come to mind for what you would tell your programmers and developers?
I mean, first off, I tell them that we need to make a game that's smooth and free-flowing. Smooth, free-flowing basketball with less canned animations and more control for the user. I would say less suction issues where, less being sucked into other players on the court and sucked into different situations and animations. More control of the post game, more control of the face-up game, and less sliding overall. So those would be my main points. I think that the animations in NBA 2K22 are often too long as well. There's too many long, drawn-out animations, whether it be, catching animations or passing animations or pivot animations, etc. Something as simple as being able to catch the ball and then, catch and go, like do a quick first step off of a catch, doesn't work the way it should in NBA 2K22. It's incredibly sluggish. It doesn't really make sense. The players aren't really moving like athletes at all. Something as simple as, dribbling and just trying to round the corner on a drive. In the video game, oftentimes it makes you go wide, and it's often incredibly sluggish. You don't feel like a real basketball player at that point, and it doesn't feel the way it should on the sticks. So I would really try to be focusing on, player movement, make it more free-flowing and smooth, less canned animations, less skating, and more control over that face-up game and that post game, while also eliminating all of the suction all around the court.
No, I definitely agree with all of that. When you put that question out there, my mind also went to concepts and approach. And I think one big thing that I would really emphasize if I were the gameplay director for 2K23 and beyond is that picking a direction, sticking with it, ensuring consistency, and it's when it comes to new tech, because eventually you are going to have to replace the code base, you're going to replace the engine as new tech is developed, but don't implement that tech until it is ready. We saw what happened with 2K18, a prime example of that it wasn't quite ready, there were problems with that system, and unfortunately they discovered some of those problems too late to really go back to what they had before. So, and again, you only have 12 months to work on these games, give or take, so that is an issue. But don't bring in that tech until it's ready. Always be striving for balance between online and offline gameplay. And here's one, don't bring in gimmicks. Avoid gimmicks, avoid changing the gameplay and controls and have gameplay mechanics that are just for the sake of having something new. And the example that comes to mind for me is shot aiming, because every time they've tried to do that, they've had to go away from it. We've seen it flop in NBA Elite 11, although that wasn't the only issue with Elite 11 and the demo, of course. 2K17 is probably when it worked the best, but not everybody's a fan of how it worked. If they were to have shot aiming, I would go with the 2K17 method. 2K21, the way they tried it, it speaks volumes that they went away with it after a year. By bringing in these ideas that are kind of half-baked, or they're not well thought out, or they don't mesh with the existing mechanics, like the effective boosts and badges and whatnot, these ideas, just don't go for them. Just don't go for these gimmicky ideas that change up the gameplay and introduce a mechanic, a new wrinkle that is just unnecessary. Avoid those unnecessary additions, the chopping and changing of control schemes so that the game doesn't feel as consistent. And yeah, just wait until tech is ready before switching over to a new system.
Right, and it's not even just about the tech either. It's just, like you said, it's kind of like the ideas in general, like the dunk meter and the alley-oop meter. Like, why was that put in there?
Oh,
like that
100%.
did need that, and it didn't function properly. Why are you putting a dunk and alley-oop meter in your game when you still can't get layup timing right?
We
which
didn't
is
need
why
that,
you
yeah.
turn off layup timing. Right, which is why you turn off layup timing by default in the game. Like right when you turn on the game, it says shots only on timing. Why? Because they know that the layup timing is basically broken in the game. It doesn't make any sense. But another point that I wanted to make too, before we get to people's responses, is stop making the game so artificial. Stop making it so dependent on artificial boosts. We've talked about how there's 80 badges now in the game. They increased that number by another 10 from NBA 2K21 to 80 now in 2K22. Stop making the artificial boosts so overpowering and actually present people with true skill gap. Present people with total control. Allow them to, be truly competitive with the game, etc. So, that's the other piece is artificial boosts. I think that they've definitely damaged the game, and they keep adding more to the game.
It's funny that they boast that, like, now we're up to 80 badges, and people go, wow. And I'm thinking,
They bragged about it. Yeah, they bragged about it.
they
like,
do.
Wait a minute.
Does more make it better? I mean, big numbers are supposedly impressive, but when you look at them out of in context and really think about it, do we need these 80 badges? Are these the kinds of boosts we need? Is this properly representing different players' skills and traits and abilities? Not always. And a lot of them are those artificial boosts that really contribute to that metagame, which in turn contributes to the toxicity. It's the big picture thinking that we've talked about so many times before. All of this stuff is connected. That's why it's important to get all of it right. And if you do bring in new mechanics, they need to be able to work with what's already in the game, or you need to alter what's already in the game to work with the new mechanics. They need to play well together. They don't always do that. And the dunk meter, the alley-oop meter, perfect examples of adding something that didn't need to be added. They don't add anything to the game. They don't create a skill gap, a proper skill gap. It's a glorified QuickTime event, essentially. It can't be turned off. And people say, oh, well, you just don't want to get good at the game or whatever. There's that phrase again, get good. But again, if you're playing offline and you don't want to be restricted by the ideas of skill gaps and elite online play and whatever, why shouldn't you be able to turn it off?
But it's not even a true skill gap, though. It's not
like
you can. It's not even like competitive. Like it's not. Listen, I just want to point something out really quick. So remember how on the last episode of the podcast I mentioned that I was going to download MJ Wizards roster?
Yes.
And play NBA 2K22 with my brother and maybe start a season. So we got on MJ Wizards roster, and this isn't MJ Wizards' fault. He did a good job with the roster. So you get on there and we start playing some head-to-head games just to try to test it out. You know what I mean? An exhibition, just to see, what, is this something that we can get into? And the head-to-head gameplay overall was just incredibly poor. We didn't have control in the face-up game, had poor control in the post game, being sucked into defenders all over the floor. The dribbling, which just isn't even close to as good as it used to be overall, as far as the ball is warping hands constantly. It's often too fast. It's unrealistic. The skating in the game, we're playing this game against each other and we're just not having fun. So we put it down. So the chances of us starting a season on NBA 2K22 against each other is slim to none at this point, even with that great roster. Because it's not about his roster being poor. It's about the gameplay overall just not being fun or, truly skill-based when we're going against each other. So that was very disappointing. But if that gives you an idea of how frustrated I am with the overall mechanics on NBA 2K22 and that type of atmosphere, so there you go.
There are some things that we just can't fix with a roster when it comes down to mechanics like that. And look, even if people want to argue that adds a challenge to the online scene, fine. But allow people playing offline, single player, the traditional modes, to switch it off if they like. Who cares? You can say that they're not elite gamers or whatever. Who cares? Quite frankly, if some people online, elitists online, are gatekeeping and making snarky remarks, it doesn't matter. What matters is enjoying the games. So giving people that option to switch those mechanics on and off, if you're going to have them, that's so important to do. But even better is to not have mechanics like that in the first place. So that's the kind of stuff that I would look at with being a gameplay director. Listening to the community's feedback, listening to the majority. Because if the majority doesn't like something, you can say, oh, they're stubborn, they don't want to get used to the new mechanics, they don't want to get good, they don't want to indulge in a learning curve, whatever. But no, it's clear that it's not an idea that's resonating with people. It's not the way people want to play virtual basketball. So listen to that majority. So that's something that you need to do. I think they did correct course on that pretty well after 2K21. They went away from shot aiming. It's one of those ideas I think they just need to shelve, because it never really seems to work out, at least with the other mechanics they have in place. So that's what I would be focusing on as a gameplay director. All of the mechanics that you talked about, those specifics, I absolutely agree. But I think conceptually, getting that approach and the concepts correct, that's where it all begins. So that's so important as the gameplay director to do for 2K.
Christ, at this point, I almost want them to have a whole new motion system, because I still feel like we're working off of 2K18s. I really do. I feel like there's a lot of things that bugged me about 2K18 that are still in NBA 2K22, as far as all of the sliding, the skating, the suction, all of that stuff. Honestly, I would not be opposed, as long as they have the tech in place and they can make it somewhat smooth in the first year. I wouldn't be opposed to them switching motion systems again, because this one, it feels like they're just piling on more frustration into the gameplay and building more frustration onto the same motion system. So, I posed that question to the community, and most of the responses that we got were actually more tailored to like modes and whatnot, and other types of things that people would want to see. But we did get a few responses about gameplay specifically.
And with that in mind, let's open up the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So first up is Trav at MidwestKing_100 on Twitter. Bring back era-based filters for classic teams, remove the 3-point line in 60s and 70s like arenas, add more customization to modes such as MyNBA, where we have the power to duplicate classic NBA seasons to relive in regards to rules, add delete divisions, etc. I wish I could answer this properly, as I haven't played it or owned an NBA 2K game since 2K20, but from what I've been hearing is the improvements that they will recommend is to bring back 2K16-like defense to the game. They've gotten lazier since there is no one on the market that could threaten their empire. Shaking my head. Yeah, 2K16 defense is a very popular wishlist item.
Well, a couple of things I want to say about that. He talks about era-specific filters. Christ, they had that in NBA Jam 2004.
Yes.
People can, make fun of that game or say it looks like a mobile game. And yeah, sometimes it does look like today's mobile games and whatnot. But it was really cool when you played against the classic teams on NBA Jam 2004, and they gave you that black and white filter, or that vintage filter, etc. And then obviously, as on NBA 2K12 with the greatest games, you play against Bill Russell's Celtics, and what do they got? They got the black and white filter, and it looks great, and it makes playing that game even more fun and more nostalgic, etc. So no, I definitely agree with that. Era-specific rules, I guess they probably think too that you can customize these yourself and try to make them a certain way with, the gameplay a certain way with sliders or anything, or you can, turn off a rule here or there, but it will never be the same or as complete as, being able to have era specific rules embedded in the game by default, whether it be, with the 90s with the semicircle, the dotted line that they ended up putting in at first, or not having the dotted line or the semicircle in there at all, and then bringing back the option to have illegal defense in there, stuff like that. I think that would help retro roster makers and people that love using those retro teams, etc. A way to remove the 3-point line, like an option that says 3-point line, yes or no, or something like that. I think that I agree that those would be incredibly nice touches. As far as NBA 2K16, it's not just the defense that I wish they would bring back, which I think was just incredibly solid because of a couple of reasons. One, less canned animations. Two, amazing foot planting. NBA 2K16 foot planting is some of the best in the entire series. So no sliding, no skating, no floating, really, in that game. But overall, offensively on NBA 2K16, the dribbling just felt awesome, and you had more options with it. You had 4 size ups, you had side to side size ups, front and back, etc. It just felt like you had a little bit more control over the dribbling and over the offense in general. The face up game was stronger, the post game was stronger, all of that. So I would say 2K16 just overall had better mechanics, more smooth and fluid gameplay than what we have in 2K22.
It really had a much better motion system. If you brought back what they had from 2K14 to 2K17, there are issues with some of the body steals, obviously, and other things and other enhancements that you would certainly make that have been there in some recent games. But as far as the overall motion system, yeah, some of those older games really do feel superior. And as far as the era-based filters and specific rules and things like that. I'd love to see those options. It'd be great to be able to change up gameplay like that. As you said, retro roster mods would be enhanced so much by having complete control over that. We did talk to Leftos about that when he was on the podcast, and it's ideas they have, the blue sky wish list and everything. So it just comes down to being able to implement that with the mechanics they've got in place and the way everything works with franchise modes and whatnot. But if they could ever do that, just so much fun we could have. And yes, and getting those mechanics back from a generation ago, from 2K16, 2K14 through to 17, would make future games so much better.
100%. I agree. And imagine with the YouTube exposure, right?
Oh,
like
sure.
The influencer exposure, what they would be doing with those filters and whatnot, and with those rosters and the hundreds of thousands and even millions of views that those videos would get.
I mean, they had an opportunity to do that this year with the 75th anniversary of the NBA, to bring back some more historical content and do some focus on that, but it's mostly been about cover players and My Team exclusives and player clothing and everything, which is unfortunately the focus these days. I just want to touch very quickly as far as when it comes to My Team. Knowledgebone at the Harassment on Twitter says, no more contracts in My Team. In Ultimate Team, in Live 19, they got rid of contracts completely. And I think maybe FIFA has, or Madden has, one of the other EA games has as well. It's kind of an outdated concept, at least for offline single play. I say offline, obviously it's a connected mode. So getting rid of contracts, I think, is absolutely something I'd be in favor of.
Can you kind of expand on why you're in favor of it and what system that would work best for you? Because, so for me, I've always dealt with contracts, right? You know, I played NBA 2K15, really enjoyed My Team on 2K15, and they did have contracts. What are your thoughts on contracts, and what do you think would be the best?
Well, I do see the point of contracts as far as being that added challenge and making sure that you can't just run with the best team indefinitely, that you need to use other players on in your roster, or you need to be able to manage your currency. I see the idea behind consumables, but it just seems like pointless busy work for offline play, for single player play, that it's restrictive. And as much as it can be a challenge to manage your currency, it's also a way of them to push buying more, so that, you need some currency to buy some contracts, or you're out of contracts, if you want to play, you need to get some more, and maybe if you don't have any currency available, you need to pump some real money in to do that. So that's what I don't like about contracts. I think they do have a use for online play as far as restricting lineups or making it more challenging to always take your best players into the online arena, and maybe that adds to some balance. But you've also got modes like Limited that place restrictions there already to make it more challenging, and other such modes within My Team that I think handle that better than My Team contracts. It just feels like an outdated concept that you could do away with it, and the mode would be just as fun and less restrictive, at least for single player. Maybe if you want to keep them for online play, but I think it's just so limiting for the single player experience.
I think one of the goals of it is to make you want to buy more packs, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
One of the goals of it is for your contracts to run out and be like, okay, well, I need these players, and now I got to buy more packs, and in turn to buy more packs, I need, to spend more money, etc. So I think that's part of the reason why it's still in there.
Well, I mean, it's not difficult to manage. Don't get me wrong. I've played My Team over the years as well, so I'm familiar with how it works, and I can work around it. But I think it's one of those concepts that is more about artificial balance, or indeed, more importantly, pushing microtransactions, and that's why I'm not in favour of it. But to that end, why I'm skeptical that it will ever be removed, because 2K doesn't really avoid ways to make money like that.
Right, 100%. And I don't think we're going in the other direction in that regard either. I think that if anything, the microtransactions and the gambling mechanics are only going to be going up from here.
No, it is very hard to be optimistic in that regard, because that is the way of gaming. That doesn't mean that it's right. We certainly don't agree with it, but it is a reality that we're facing when it comes to recurrent revenue mechanics. Jason Paul, at ThatJPaul on Twitter. I tell them to play NBA 2K11, NBA Live 2005, and other classics. Come back with a few things from each game to implement. Create true and transparent matchmaking for MyPlayer online modes. Solicit pitches for an updated Jordan Challenge mode, NBA 75 Greatest Moments, etc. I took some liberties with scope creep outside of gameplay, but if my foot was in the door, I'm trying to steer the whole ship.
No, I love that comment. He talks about the 75 greatest moments in the NBA and maybe making a mode around that. I think it's a wasted opportunity to not do something for the 75th anniversary as far as like offline content etc. And like we talked about on the last podcast, the last time they truly added a mode to offline was LeBron's Path to Greatness for NBA 2K14. He also mentions true and transparent matchmaking, and I know that when he said that, you probably lit up.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, that is something I've been a big advocate for years now, with all my experience playing in the online arena, 2K Pro-Am, the Rec, the Playground, etc. And that is still within the scope of gameplay, I would say, because it does affect the gameplay experience. And it goes back to the overall direction and concepts that I referred to. And one of those is to avoid elitism and to make the game welcoming to newcomers and give you an arena where you can level up and face tougher competition as you get better. Again, I've mentioned it so many times before, but Rocket League does this very well. Other games that have proper matchmaking do this so well. It works for the community, for both newcomers and for the elite gamers alike. You have unranked play where it's a bit more of a free-for-all, and then you have the ranked play where it's you're competing against people at your skill level. And look, I know skill-based matchmaking is very controversial, and obviously there are people that tank their ratings, their rankings, so that they can move down and feast on people, much as squads go to the Rec and whatnot to feast on randoms. So there's not going to be a perfect solution, but just because a solution isn't perfect doesn't mean it shouldn't be tried if it will improve the game. And getting rid of that elitism, that toxicity, getting proper matchmaking in there is so important to providing a solid online gameplay experience, one that is welcoming, one that provides a stimulating challenge, just one that really caters to everybody. And that's what the game should be doing. It doesn't mean dumbing it down for the newbies. It doesn't mean getting rid of a competitive atmosphere or whatnot. In fact, it's going to make it for a better competitive atmosphere, although to that point, I think there's a lot of people that want a competitive atmosphere, or claim to, that really just want to beat up on randoms and lesser players. So get rid of that stuff, make it more welcoming to new players, get a proper leveling system, and you get a much better gameplay experience online.
But don't you love being judged by what you're wearing?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I can't afford Crocs, so I'm not going in the Playground. I don't want to be embarrassed.
I was watching some highlights that I want to say it was Liam Mossy from Twitter. I want to say there were highlights that he posted of him playing out on the blacktop and whatnot, and some guy running around with a backpack and a cowboy hat on. I'm like, I could never play this. It's just, I would not be able to take that seriously. I think that looks foolish. In my opinion, that doesn't belong on a basketball court. So, I think about sometimes, if I go and play regular pickup, if somebody's trying to, play basketball with me and he's wearing a cowboy hat and he's wearing a backpack and Crocs, I'm probably not going to want to play with him because he's not taking that action seriously.
Oh, absolutely. Did you see the clip of the guy who did a backflip after shooting a shot in a real game?
Yes, I saw that. He banked in a deep three and then did a backflip. Yeah. I mean, people are just not taking the game seriously anymore. I mean, it's okay to have fun, but I just think that's, I don't know. Is that really called for? I don't know. I did want to bring up another point. He brings up NBA 2K11 and NBA Live 2005, and going back to playing classics like that, and then taking the good parts of each of those games. I would have liked for him to expand just a little bit more, maybe on what parts that he likes from those games that he would like to see in NBA 2K23. In my opinion, I'd say probably the loose dribbling feel and fluidity of NBA Live 2005 would be one of them, and then just the overall sim style of gameplay that was in NBA 2K11 and the good foot planning and whatnot. I think, and the good overall defense too. 2K11 is very good overall by default, defensively, mechanics wise, and the way the AI handles defense. I think that those are definitely things that developers could look at and say, hey, we want to implement those type of ideas, maybe not exactly, but those type of ideas in NBA 2K23 to make it an overall stronger game.
Well, conceptually, once again, it's about focusing on the sim aspect, making it a realistic game, and also a fun game, not focusing on these recurrent revenue mechanics. Again, the suits are going to get in your way if you are the gameplay director here on 2K in that regard, but focusing on that enjoyable virtual basketball experience is paramount. And having that strong sim core and gameplay that feels fun, then you can pick it up and play, and you don't master it straight away. You still need to master the basics and the more advanced moves before you can really become elite on the sticks. But that it is accessible and fun and realistic is what made those games so great. So again, the whole approach to the game and the gameplay is what it comes down to.
100%. People want to have fun with these games. They want to be competitive, but they also want to have fun. And I think that's what's been missing from the series for a few years now.
Next up, we have at ShortFuse205 on Twitter. He says, I agree with everything you said. Keep in mind, I pretty much only play Rec. These guards that run back and forth at super speed, impossible to guard. Even when you know exactly what they're going to do, they move 3 times faster than you do on defense. No NBA player in history can dribble as fast or change direction that quickly. Me and my homie call them playmaking crackheads. Rebounding is broken. Have someone perfectly boxed out, doesn't matter. If they have a high rebounding rate, the ball will clip through their body or hands and magically end up in their hands. Screens are broken. Someone can set a screen at me, and I'll go the other direction as not to run into it. Yeah, that comes back to the canned moments, and rebounding is something that I've noticed they've not done as good of a job of hiding the strings, if you will, the smoke and mirrors that mask those underlying mechanics, and you do see the ball warp and clip through hands to go to the intended rebounder based on ratings and whatnot, and badges, obviously, because they have an impact on that as well.
Badges, yeah. It's the artificial boost and the ratings combination that makes it a complete cheese fest, yeah.
And I've been playing 2K14 recently, so I have seen some times when the ball warps like that. It's not new. It has been an issue through various motion systems and engines so far, but when it does feel very false and very canned, yeah, again, and it's very off-putting like that. And yes, the super speed, the zigzag cheese, and the screen cheese, everything like that is really, it's come down to what moves can you spam, what meta can you build your player with for maximum boosts and artificial advantage, and then taking advantage of these moves that you can exploit. It's come down to that, which is not fun.
Right. When he said he agreed with everything that I said, what I was saying in the prior tweet was, highlighting some of the gameplay issues that I've already highlighted earlier in the show, like the game being full of canned animations and artificial boosts, and the skating and the poor face-up game and the poor post game, etc. So that's what he was talking about when he said that. Otherwise, 100%, when I watch the 2K League, to me it looks laughable, and it has since NBA 2K18, which is the first year that they kicked it off. The action looks ridiculous. The players don't move realistically at all. It's a complete cheese fest. Like that guy that scored, 70 or 80 points, and I think it was on 2K18 or 2K19. It was actually on 2K18 because he was abusing the blow-by. It was just him cheesing the controllers with ridiculous speed boosts, and then just getting a defender on his side who was riding him the entire time, and he would just score over and over and over and over and over again. Online play just looks absolutely ridiculous to me the majority of the time, and that's why I really have no interest in going into that mode. It just keeps bringing me back to the videos of online play that you showed me of you trying to play defense, and they're doing step back threes from right inside half court and cheesing the behind the back dribble, the Steph Curry dribble over and over and over and over again, and they're just hitting everything. I think I want to say they went 21 for 27 threes in that game, taking those types of shots. That's not skill gap. That's not real basketball. Those people that are doing that stuff are not skilled at the game. It just goes back to the ratings in combination with the artificial boosts and the cheesy mechanics that are allowing them to pull that stuff off. So that stuff is incredibly frustrating.
And to bring up shot aiming again, the argument has always been, a skill gap, you don't want a skill gap, you're not good enough, get good at the aiming mechanics. And they further argue, look, you can shoot this well with shot aiming. But to me, that's not a good argument in favor of shot aiming, because it shows how cheesy it can be, how exploitable it can be, and that's not good either. It's just as cheesy as green releases with an added learning curve. So again, that's why I'm not in favor of shot aiming. At least 2K17 was the best, as I said, but anything outside that has just not been a better solution. So again, if it's that cheesy and that exploitable, add the artificial boosts on top of that, and you get an online scene that's just about what moves can I spam? Absolutely.
In my opinion, like if I was making a basketball video game and I was trying to give the best experience possible to the consumer, I would make sure that they had as much control as possible over the action, over their player in general. So, and I think that's where NBA 2K is missing the mark, especially since 2K18, is that lack of control of the player, the lack of control over the action, the lack of true skill gap. So, yeah, I'm not on board with how they move forward with the series.
And finally, we have Stildo33 at OneKidneyKenny on Twitter. Stildo33 in the forum, of course, says the entire series, LOL, well customizable by the era playing in, more historical content, make it play like 17 and 19. Add some video game features too. Technical fouls, like coach initiated and arguing with a call. You can challenge a play in Madden and overturn it. Why can't I decide if my coach should get a tech or two and ejected? Then the assistant could get tossed too, and you have to have a player coach. And he also mentions when Dennis Johnson was for the Celtics against the Bucks once. Would also be fun to have shattered backboards, just make it a feature to turn on or off. Nothing was more fun than breaking the glass on Bird vs. Dr. J and the janitor coming out yelling at you. Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see some more video game elements, optional if nothing else.
Yeah, I thought that was actually a cool touch on Coach K college basketball, the ability to shatter the backboard.
Definitely.
And obviously, that's not a arcade game. That was a 5-on-5 sim college basketball game. I'm still, I think, one of the most underrated college basketball games ever made. Great soundtrack, fun gameplay. It had that NBA Live 95, 96 style gameplay. And I thought it was just really well executed. Obviously, the era-specific stuff is huge. And then things like getting teed up. Remember I told you that I got teed up by the game on NBA 2K14 because of my Kinect? I swore, and the Kinect picked it up.
Yes.
And I ended up getting a technical. So we had that back then on NBA 2K14. It would be cool for them to somehow implement a way to, argue calls in the game, or, maybe act out against the ref, or, choose how you act out against the ref. I think that would be really fun. A fun feature, and I think that people would really enjoy that. What's funny about Stildo, and I'll let you respond to what he said first before I say this. After he sent me that text that you just read off, he ended up calling me and leaving me a really long voicemail talking about the issues that he actually has with the gameplay, like in between the lines.
I'm looking forward to hearing that, obviously, but shattered backboards would be really cool to see. Hanging on the rim, as in Kobe Bryant NBA courtside, holding the shoot button down to continue holding on the rim. That's something else we haven't seen very often outside of that game that I can recall. So that would be really cool. And I do remember getting texts from the Kinect with a PlayStation camera. Actually, I got one in 2K14 playing on PS5 because there is a microphone in the controller, and I'd forgotten to mute that microphone or turn off the voice controls in the game, and I was actually listening to a podcast, and they swore on the podcast, and it picked up the profanity from the podcast and gave me a technical for that. So that was pretty funny. So that's a really cool feature. Unfortunately, the NBA is very strict about what they allow in games, so they may not want the fighting, or even just arguing with the referee and technicals for that. They've kind of had to be very careful about what technicals they put in the game because of what the NBA will allow. But, things are changing in the NBA under Silver, of course, for better or worse, depending on how you look at things. But maybe things will change with the video games in that respect, that they will allow more latitude there. So, but if nothing else, I like the suggestion.
Part of me, if I ever created a basketball video game, part of me would almost want to do it without the NBA license and create a vanilla game that you can customize, but then be able to add all these features. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you're not bound by the NBA, by the rules, by the politics around it. So let me get to what he left on the voicemail. So this isn't exactly his wording, but this is kind of what he was getting at. He said, basically past games feel more fluid and more reactive. The games today are overall over animated, and I definitely agree with that point. I talked about it. There's definitely issues with suction because of it, where you're being sucked into defenders all over the court, etc. When you drive to the hoop or even on the perimeter, it's hurt the face-up game, it's hurt the post game. He also states that NBA 2K17 and prior, that you were more often than not able to smoothly string moves together, and it felt good overall. The game was more fluid instead of being dragged all over the court by forced animations. So that's the first part of his voicemail, and I think you can agree with those points.
Oh, definitely comes back to what we've said and what so many other people said here, is having that control and that fluidity, going back to what made previous games so much fun, and how they've moved away from some of those concepts, or they've tried to introduce new tech that just simply hasn't worked out. And like I said, don't bring in that new tech before it's ready.
100%. Another point that he made was he said that shooting doesn't feel as good as it used to, and players miss makeable shots far too often, making it almost impossible to get on shooting streaks with players, which is unrealistic. And I can definitely agree with that. I think that one thing that's really hurt the series is they make it almost impossible to hit a contested or semi-contested shot, and you can't get on streaks as a result. And then often you're missing completely wide open shots that should be going in the majority of the time. But we talked about it with NBA 2K17 with how they poorly handled protected shots. They took the protected shot feature out, but it's still ridiculously almost impossible to hit contested shots. And I think that it really hurts the gameplay.
It does, because you look at players in the real NBA, in real life, they are making some tough shots from time to time. And it's one of those things that's, I guess, hard to represent on the virtual hardwood, because it has to be balanced. It can't be that you can do it too easily, and the CPU shouldn't be able to do it too easily to you either. And it's one of those things where it happens in a game and you think, oh, that feels so fake. Kind of like those canned turnovers I was talking about with Thaddeus Young being afraid of the ball in 2K14. I mean, mishandled passes and easy passes being missed or fumbled does happen, and it's hard to make that feel organic and natural and acceptable in video games. Realism is one of those things that we want until we get it sometimes, because then reality is not always desirable, obviously. But implementing it in a way that feels organic and acceptable, and that it's not frustrating and annoying and feels phony is a challenge. But it's something they do need to be striving for. And yes, those protected shots, you get rid of them, but you've still got those underlying mechanics. I've definitely noticed that.
Yeah, and the other point, too, that I want to make, he didn't bring this up, but I'll bring it up, too, is the unbelievable, ridiculous amount of missed layups over and over again. With NBA players, even with somebody smaller on you, you're just missing constantly at the rim, especially if you have layup timing on. Layup timing is completely broken in that game, and you can even have a guy like Wilt Chamberlain or Shaquille O'Neal or Hakeem Olajuwon underneath the hoop and just bricking over and over and over and over again shots right at the hoop, because the game, even if your defender is not even actually physically making contact with you, there's that like force field between you and the defender, and they're either being dragged into that force field or they're already in that space, and they'll just it will be a 100% contested shot, even if you truly have blue sky, and they'll just keep missing over and over again. So that's another issue with that. But the last point that he made too was, he said, lack of differentiation in speed. Taking a big man off the dribble doesn't work the way it should. So that's basically, he said his wording was more long-winded on that. That was me kind of summarizing it. But I definitely agree. I think that it's still still doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Like if I have Ja Morant and say, let's see, Steven Adams is switched on to me, then in that situation, I should be able to blow by Steven Adams the majority of the time. But what ends up happening in NBA 2K22, and this was also a problem with NBA Live 19, is you'll go to do a move and you're put into this really super slow motion side by side where you can't really truly blow by Steven Adams. So I can definitely agree that was a problem with NBA 2K19. It's not as big of a problem with NBA 2K22, as I feel like I can usually get by anybody, really, if I have a good ball handler. But I see where he's coming from with that complaint.
And of course, sometimes it goes the other way, where the blow-bys are just too easy. You get in that hip-riding animation and just go at a diagonal, and you can get to the hoop with anybody. We've seen that in games before, 2K18 being a notorious offender there. But absolutely, I relate to that frustration playing my team, and I've got a pretty good Michael Jordan card, and I'm going against Enes Kanter, and he's just matching foot speed with MJ and just staying in front of him, always just matching his pace. And it's just so unrealistic when you think, if you took a prime MJ, against Enes Kanter, he's blowing by him for the dunk, tongue wagging all the way. And other explosive players too throughout history. The pendulum once again swings between those extremes of blow-bys and hip-riding animations being too effective, or not effective enough that you can't have that explosiveness. So I definitely relate to that.
And the kind of last point that he made was, striking the right balance between simulation and arcade. So basically striking the right balance between simulation and, in my opinion, when people say arcade, they mean fun, right? Like
looser, yeah.
Right, loose fun. And I think that's where a lot of the past games, hit the mark, and where the titles since 2K18 have failed to hit that mark. And we actually had a couple people mention that when we did one of our other recent mailbags, where they wanted the right balance between sim and arcade. So I see where he's coming from with that as well.
Again, it's the overall approach to gameplays and not the concepts that they're going with, the style of play, whatever you want to call it, just nailing that so that it's accessible and fun, enjoyable for everyone.
Yep, 100%. And I think that's why, the gentleman that said that 2K11 or Live 2005, like he said, the developers should go back and play games like that and choose the best pieces of those games. He mentions those two titles because I can guarantee you that when he plays those titles, he gets that right balance between simulation and arcade, and he has fun with those games. And like I said earlier in the podcast, that's what people want. They just want to be able to have fun and be able to create, positive memories with the games.
Undoubtedly. And my final comment is that obviously there are some talented people working on the games. I do think that Mike Wong Beluba does have some great ideas. I think EA dropped the ball by going to Elite 11 and alienating him and losing his mind and his vision for virtual basketball. But unfortunately, and look, I don't want to make excuses here, but unfortunately, they do have to bend to the will of the suits. And that is something that we do need to keep in mind, that if we were given the keys to the car, that we'd still have a backseat driver in the form of the executives, unfortunately.
This is true, but in my case, I would not implement mechanics that I didn't believe in. So I just want to point that out, or implement systems that I didn't believe in. And maybe that means I'll never work for a basketball video game company ever. People that make a company that makes basketball video games, because maybe they'd consider me combative or something like that. But I wouldn't implement mechanics that I thought were not in the best interest of the consumer.
No, that is the approach that I would want to take as well, and I think that everybody that answered this mailbag prompt would also take that approach as well. But yeah, it is an unfortunate reality of video game design, video game development these days, that those mechanics are going to be pushed by the suits who want to line their pockets. But yeah, if you could find a way to maliciously comply, perhaps, with their demands and still make that best game possible, I think would be the best of both worlds and the most realistic. But no, I think some great ideas here, and it's a common theme, as is often the case when we put out these mailbag prompts. I think the community is pretty unified, pretty much on the same page when it comes to a lot of the things that would make the best possible game. And to that end, you think we might be able to influence change, but it is an uphill battle with the suits. Not to mention people with influence who are shouting down good ideas because they want to stand up for the company and shield for the company and to keep their access and whatnot, or because they've got very selfish and elitist ideas about the game, and they should not be the ones that are being catered to. Again, I've talked about the conceptual approach to the game, the whole philosophy of the design of 2K if you are the gameplay director, and catering to the elitists, I think, has just been so damaging to the game, and that's something I would absolutely not do, and it's something I would hope that they don't do moving forward.
Right, it's gone away from quality and more is centered now around influence and who will promote the game and the gambling aspects of the game. So the gambling modes, the games with those, the modes with those gambling mechanics, the online modes, etc. So it's less about quality now and proper promotion and in the best interest of the consumer, and it's more about that. So that's unfortunate.
But it's a business, Derek. That's what they're telling me. That's apparently an excuse.
Yeah, I've seen that enough on the forums, and it makes me want to puke.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for all the responses to the mailbag prompt. As always, we will be putting out a mailbag prompt each and every week. You can write into the show, podcast at nb-live.com. We'd love to hear from you. But once again, great responses from the community, Derek.
No, I love the interaction lately with the community questions / mailbag. And I can't wait to put out the prompt again next Thursday or Friday and to see what type of responses that we're going to get.
But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 415 of the NLSC podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. The show comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, of course, which is ma-live.com. You can also find us on all your favourite podcatching apps and platforms, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, just to name a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. Please feel free to leave us a hopefully positive review on any platforms that allow it, such as Apple Podcasts. And of course, you can listen to the podcast on our YouTube channel, and we love hearing from you in the comments. And on the subject of interaction, Derek, what are your socials and any other final words you have for our listeners this week?
Thank you for continuing to send highlights in for the top 10 plays of the week. I look forward to doing that every single week, so keep sending me those highlights. And thank you for interacting with the mailbag and the show in general. You can reach me at D4FreeG on Twitter or at D4Free84. You can also reach me on the NLSC forums, D4Free, where I'm a team member. And you can reach me on YouTube as well, D4Free.
As always, stay tuned throughout the week for all the original content we do at the NLSC, the podcast, of course, but also Monday Tip-Off, Way Back Wednesday, and the Friday 5. I am Andrew NLSC on Twitter and Andrew in the forum. You can find the NLSC on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube is youtube.com/NBA Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, NBA-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.